With that, we'll go ahead and get started. And if anybody else joins, then they'll join in progress. So thank you, first off, for spending a couple of minutes with me today to talk a little bit about panel. This is the second one of these webinars I'm having to address some of the common questions that have been coming up during the panel beta. And so, so it's a little bit easier to get information across in this kind of a format. Plus, it's a little interactive. If you have a question, then you can answer. If you are interested in diving in more into the features and functionality of it, then please send me an email or get in touch with me via the website. I would love to do a one-on-one with just you or your some other people in your school to show you about panel. And of course, you can sign up for the beta and kick the tires on it yourself. But this is really about answering some questions that are sort of common thread questions. So without any more, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Pretty short agenda today. We'll go about 45 minutes is my guess. So we're going to talk about what panel is. We're going to discuss why we have a beta open. We're going to discuss student data privacy. There's been quite a few questions around that. And then we're going to discuss the security model that panel uses to make sure that your information is secure. And then we're going to talk through I'm going to do a really screaming demo. So this is not a demo presentation webinar, but I am going to talk through the very high level features of it in case you have zero exposure with it. And then I'll try and make sure to address any questions that have come up through that. So please do chat any questions that you have in the discussion. Okay, so that's our agenda for the day. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to do a deep dive, then please hit me up and you and I will schedule a one-on-one where we can really answer any questions about how this tool might or might not work for your district. Okay, so first off, what is panel in a nutshell and why did we make it? So this tool helps schools manage technical assets. So it's an asset management tool really at the core. It's primarily for Windows and Chromebooks assets, but you can do any asset you want. You can inventory control any asset you want, and we're using it for a lot more than just Chromebooks and Windows, but those come naturally to the tool. So it syncs with Google and pulls your stuff in from Google, so you don't have to re-enter your Chromebooks, you don't have to re-enter your people into panel. All of that comes over just through Google Sync. And then your PCs show up automatically by installing an agent on the PC, and it's a little MSI. You install it the way you would any other MSI, either by hand, or you can push it via GPO or PDQ deploy or whatever tool you use to push software out. And then any other asset you can manually enter. So like I said, we're putting TVs and document cameras, you could put projectors, any kind of thing that you want to inventory control you can put in there. And some of the newer features that we're building into panel really take advantage of you putting things that aren't just Chromebooks and PCs in. You get a lot of bang for the buck for managing your other inventory in there. And then there are some checkout and check-in kinds of functionalities I'm going to show you. Manage the location. Chromebooks and PCs will check in with their geographic location, the last location they were used. That can be pretty beneficial. And for PCs, for Windows machines, you can do package deployment through panel, which is pretty slick. So if you're using GPOs or PDQ deploy or something else to do package deployment now, panel might do that for you. And if you're installing software by hand, panel might have something to offer you on that. So that's kind of in a nutshell the features overview. We're adding some features to it. In fact, one of them I'll allude to a little bit later on. So why did we make this though? We already have all of these other tools, and that's a great question. So at the beginning of the we've been getting that question a bit, like why did you build this? At the beginning of when I first started this company, after I sold out of my old company and started this new one, I really had a pragmatic approach, and I always have, about technology management. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to reduce the amount of metal that we have. We're really, as schools, leveraging a lot of cloud tools now, but we're still bound to servers in a lot of ways. And I challenged the other engineer that works with me, my lead engineer, Hollis, how can we reduce the number of servers down in an ecosystem, and all of the headaches that come along with that, hardware replacement and disaster recovery strategies and operating system upgrades and corruptions and all of those things. So that was a big impetus for us. We wanted to be able to remotely support anytime. we did not want any VPNs, but we did not want to have to sacrifice security to get no VPNs. And if you've looked at doing a cloud migration to Azure, for example, then you know that there's a lot of VPN requirements that can come with that territory. We want a remote work friendly environments. That's code for COVID-proof environments, so that if a teacher was quarantining for 2 weeks, she wasn't totally disrupted during that time. She could take her laptop, home and still do a vast majority, if not everything, that she needed to do. And so with these sort of objectives, we started looking at the best practices tools that were at our disposal for that. And so Azure hosted AD servers. So virtualizing in Azure, we looked at Azure AD, we looked at Azure ADDS, Active Directory services. We looked at AWS hosted, which was actually the closest to what we actually wanted, but we still had all of our operating system concerns that we had to deal with, and there were still VPNs at play in order to make it work the way we wanted to. And we looked at some other RMMs. None did everything we wanted, and all of them that were close were either too expensive, too complex, or both. So we had a challenge where we couldn't meet our objectives, and we kept going back to, it's not that hard. There are only a couple of things that we really need, and we decided to build those couple of things that we really needed, and started using those in-house. And that actually became useful enough for us to think, we got to start sharing this with some other schools. Is there a roadmap to a tool that we can build a product out of that other schools could take advantage of? So that was the sort of the birth of Panel over the last 14 months. So now we're in beta. That's the origin story of the tool, and we had it as an in-house tool only for a long time. We started using it in our school production environments last August. Last summer is when we first rolled it out in our production environments, and have used them in production environments for all of this time. But during that time, we hardened it to the point where we were ready to release it to other people to kick the tires on. And the beta is all about us being confident enough with some people that we invited into closed beta, saying it's pretty good for us to open it up to open beta. And that's why we're doing that. We really need a large group of disparate districts trying it out to figure out really what works is important to us, but what doesn't work is very important. That's what really matters to us is there something in here that we're claiming does X, but it doesn't? Or is there something that's just so cumbersome to use, it's not even useful? That's really what we're after in the beta, and why we're hoping that if your school hasn't signed up, that you'll consider signing up so that we can get that feedback. There's zero obligation to go forward with it. We know that this tool is not going to be perfect for every district, but it costs you nothing to participate in beta except a little bit of time and hopefully some honest feedback for us. So if you're thinking about it and you haven't thought that it might be worth testing, we would encourage you to sign up. Even if all you do is log in and look at it for an hour, provide some feedback on why it's not right for your district, that would be valuable for us. So that's what the beta is all about. So let's talk about student data privacy. We're getting a lot of questions on this. This has been at the top of my mind because I'm a Montana tech guy. I know the struggle that Montana law has put in the path of school districts and vendors reaching agreement without it being a production. And so I was hoping that this wouldn't even be a concern with the tool, but it is, because we do sync with Google. And because we sync with Google, we're pulling over student information, and that puts us under Montana code annotated. What I did not want to do was have to go through the SPDC process. I didn't want the complications of having to do the online upload of things and then go and sign things back and forth. And that was the hurdle, obviously, that was placed in front of us, and the normal path for most established vendors, especially out-of-state vendors that wanted to provide a tool. I worked with the attorney that represents my firm and said, I don't want that, and let's get involved with MTSBA and find a better way. And Chris Goss worked with us to that end. We've built a software as a service contract that perfectly meets the letter of Montana law in MTSBA's mind. Obviously it did in ours, and we worked with Chris to find mutual understanding there. So if you sign a contract with us for us to provide panel to your school district, you don't have to go through any of the online signing back and forth. It perfectly meets the letter of the law in just that. So I'm very proud of that. It took us a while to get there, actually, but I'm really happy that a Montana provider, me, and I've been in this for a while in Montana. I'm really happy that I'm able to show Montana it's possible for a vendor to build a contract that meets Montana law, that lets us avoid all the complexities of doing that online stuff that's kind of cumbersome. And a lot of districts just throw their hands up and say, how am I even successful here? We sidestep that with Panel because our contract is compliant. So here's the one page of our contract, and if anybody wants a copy of it, please email me and I can send you an unsigned contract. This is all it takes to be 100% compliant with Montana law. And this has been vetted by MTSBA again. Chris Goss gave it the once over and said, let school districts know that if they put this in front of me, I've already reviewed it and I'm going to give it the green light. So I'm very proud of that fact. And if you have any questions about that, please ask and I'll address them. But I want the word to get out because I'm pretty happy that we were able to find that commonality with MTSBA. So let's talk a little bit about Panel's security model, because we do have sensitive information, and not only that, but we're able to do work on PCs. It's important that the security model is solid. So Panel adheres to a philosophy that some of you may have heard of called Zero Trust. Zero Trust is basically the terminology for nothing on your network trusts anything, including the network. So a lot of times we think I'm inside the firewall at my school and so everything here is trusted. A zero trust mindset is I can't trust my network because there may be an assailant on the inside of the network, for example. So Panel adheres to this because we wanted the idea of not having to have a VPN. We don't want to have to trust a network. And so, like you'll remember at the beginning, no VPNs was a core tenet of ours. We wanted to make sure that our tool worked in an environment without requiring the use of VPNs. So Zero Trust basically says this: Panel doesn't trust your network. Your network doesn't have to perfectly trust Panel. Panel does not trust all of your PCs, and your PCs, as a collective, do not trust Panel. So this is beyond HTTPS encryption. Everything is over HTTPS because obviously we want to have the tunnel encrypted, but as technologists in schools, you know that we purposefully tear apart HTTPS every day. We are purposefully ripping it apart so that we can look inside of it and see what kids are doing on the internet, see if we should be content filtering it. It's one of the things that we're actually pretty good at. And so HTTPS was not good enough for us. We knew that we needed to go to another level of encryption. And so every message from the cloud to a PC or from a PC to the cloud is encrypted in a public-private key pair destined only for that endpoint or only from that endpoint. So I'll describe that just a little bit more. When the cloud sends a message to a computer in your network, it sends a message to a computer in your network. And if that is intercepted by any other device in the universe, they can't decrypt it, even one of your computers. So if a man in the middle does unravel the HTTPS encryption and get their hands on the message, they can't violate that message or even try and impersonate the receiver because it's totally encrypted. Only the receiver can decrypt it. Likewise, when a PC sends a message to the cloud, the PC says, it's encrypted with the endpoint decryptor just for this PC. And if it comes in and isn't decrypted as coming from that PC, then it's discarded as garbage data. And so that gives us perfect reliability on the security to and from PCs in your organization. And then your packages, deployment packages, let's say you're pushing Google Chrome. Google Chrome is downloaded from Google, And so there's an opportunity for interception when it's coming to your PC from Google. And so we do an SHA2, a SHA2 checksum validation of all packages delivered to make sure that that download has not been tampered with on the way either. And with Google, we have a high degree of confidence that Google is going to provide good things. But if it's a third-party provider, like let's say 7-Zip, popular package, we probably trust 7-Zip, but maybe we don't trust the host that hosts that file. Again, if it fails to pass SHA2 checksum validation, then the package is discarded and no work takes place on your machine. So we built this whole thing around zero trust, and we didn't come up with this model. This is some industry standard best practices now, but we did think that it was important to get that validated. So we did hire LMG Security. Some of you will know Karen Palmer. She was the tech director at Billings Public Schools for a long time. She's the chief operating officer at LMG, and I contacted her and hired her team to do a third-party audit of our security model and code around that transport. And they put inspectors in the way and ripped the HTTPS apart to validate that it was encrypted properly. And I have a detailed report that I would go over with anybody, but it has technical information with it, so I won't share it in the webinar. So that's a little bit about the security model and our confidence in the security model, because there are some questions about that. So we're going to only go through a couple of the features today because they're the highest level features, but I'm going to go ahead and show that to you now. Okay, so the Hill Bay organization here is a fictitious organization that doesn't really exist. This is like your school district. When you log into Panel, all of the functionalities, the modules down the left-hand side are the different ways that you can interact with Panel. We do have a security model, so you can invite other people in your organization to participate in Panel, and you don't have to make them administrators. This is an administrative perspective. You could give them less than administrative access, and then they would see fewer modules. They'd be able to do less in the tool, but this is an administrative perspective. Down the left-hand side, you can see we are syncing our people from G Suite. Again, I don't have to enter people in here. And then I'm going to click over to Assets. And again, I'm only showing you a few of the high-level things, but in Assets, we can see there are only 3 assets in this. Again, this is a demo organization. We have 1 PC and 2 Chromebooks. And again, Chromebooks and PCs we see side by side. They both come in automatically. The Chromebooks are pulled in from Google during the sync, and PCs are imported through the use of that client MSI. I'll go ahead and click into a Chromebook first. A lot of places have a lot of Chromebooks. So here's Chromebook Detail. The Chromebook Detail, it's really using a read-only perspective in Google for all of Google's Chromebook metadata, and all of that comes over, so I get perspective to all of that. Not every piece, but most of the interesting pieces. And then it adds some additional things that we get through the use of a Chrome extension that you push. So this Chrome OS device information tab actually shows all of the raw information coming over from Google. So the usual suspects that are in Google for Chromebooks are all available in here, and maybe in a little bit of a simpler way to digest. It also does give you login history so that you can see which people have been using it over time. It gives you the best information it can on that. And then it does give you geolocation, and this is extremely accurate if you use the Chrome extension. So if you push the Chrome extension, very simple to do, just like the other ones that you push, your Chromebooks will show up, and it is very accurate. Some of the people in beta are using it to not just tell that the Chromebook is at the middle school, but actually it's probably in one of these 2 classrooms in the middle school. So very accurate, like within 20 feet accurate. PCs also show up with their geolocation. Desktop PCs, it's not nearly as accurate as laptops, but it's still relatively close. And there is a check-in and out feature. So you can see this check-in button right here. Right now, this one is checked out. It's checked out to Ernie. This is a fictitious person. But this, in the same way, if you have a one-on-one program, or if you just want to assign your teacher laptops, for example, to your teachers, you can check them out to the individuals. And this is why we like to sync. This is why we're syncing users over from Google, so that we have all of our people in here and we can check things out to our people now. And if you check things out, then you do get this librarian perspective, if you will, of who I checked it out to and when. And when I check it back in, it says who did the checking in, and it becomes available for the next person. And again, it shows that Ernie is the person that has it checked out. If I click through to Ernie, I can actually see here the checked out assets that are assigned to Ernie right now, this one Chromebook. And so I can click back and forth from the person that has the asset as well as the assets, sort of navigate the universe around that, see if Ernie has any other assets checked out to him. So this is a Chromebook. PCs also have perspective. They have different information that comes over. A PC will show you its hardware profile, its software profile, its printer profile by default. So I can get a handle on the hardware mechanics of any of the PCs in my my field by just clicking on the hardware and see how much RAM does it have, CPU, all of that kind of stuff, and then what software is installed on this particular PC. And there are roll-up reports. So if I want to see all the PCs in my organization that have Office 2016, for example, because I want to do an upgrade, then I can go there and get a report of all of the assets that have that. Check in and out, of course, still works here. You can see that this one's gone through a few checks in and out. Geolocation works. And then I'm actually doing package deployment to this. So I'm going to come back to this asset and show that in a second. We do have packages predefined. There are about 50 predefined packages of the usual suspects that schools are interested in. We call those blueprints. So if the public library blueprints are available to any organization that signs up, and they're the ones that most people are going to be interested in. The reason that we call it the public library is because they're publicly available. If you're working with another school and you kind of have like another school where you're friends with the tech coordinator there, the two of you could build a library that's private just to the two of you and share blueprints just between the two of you. Nobody else would even see the library. So we did build a little bit of a social platform in there because I work with other people closely. You might also, and this is a way to share some best practices back and forth. But all of these come out of the box and as part of our public library. So you can see a lot of the usual suspects here that we might be interested in are here. And like if I search for Google, then I can see there are a bunch of Google-based things, including Chrome, for example. And if I wanted to install Chrome, then I would just subscribe to it, and I already have on this. And then that package becomes part of the packages that I have in my organization. So I can pull over the packages that I'm interested in, ignore the ones that I'm not interested in, organize them in my own libraries as I see fit, and then define deployable instances of the packages. And we call those modifiers. And there are reasons why modifiers exist that I'm not going to go into here, but I'd love to talk through that with anybody. And then after you define the packages, you build asset groups. And asset groups are just groups of PCs, really. And you're assigning groups of PCs behavior through blueprints, and then you put assets into those groups, and they adopt that behavior. And a PC can be in more than one asset group. So in this way, you can build a base config asset group and put your usual suspects like Adobe Reader and Chrome and whatever you want into there. And then every PC goes in there. And then maybe you also have a teacher laptop group that has some specialty software, or a Promethean group, and an asset that goes in there gets the Promethean software, for example. So if a PC is in one of these, like our desktop is, then they have behavior assigned to them through these asset groups. And if I just scroll down on here, I can actually see the groups that this PC is a member of and the behaviors that it's adopting because it's a member of those groups. So this PC is automatically going to have some registry settings. We have some baseline registry settings that we like on every machine. And we make this available in the public library so you guys can look at what we think are pretty cool, like some power settings and ability to RDP into it and things like this. And then install Adobe Reader and install Chrome. So this PC is going to have all of those behaviors sent to it automatically, and then it'll report in with what we call modifier reports with the disposition of each of those attempts. So if it worked, it's going to tell me when it worked and how it worked and give me a little report if a report is available. So that's a pretty cool functionality. So if you're using GPO or PDQ deploy, this can be a pretty powerful substitute for that potentially in your organization. Or if you're installing by hand, this can potentially save you some time. There are some other things I'm going to just scream over. This again isn't a feature demo. I'm just trying to give you an understanding of the tool at the highest level. So we do have this concept of subscriptions, and this is a roll up across your organization of any time-bound agreements you have on an asset. A classic example would be a Dell server warranty. So I have a server warranty, and we would enter that into here as a subscription against the server. Or maybe it's your Lightspeed subscription. You put that in here as a subscription. Then I can go to subscriptions and see a list of all of my time-bound agreements. And we built this in because we were having to manage this through spreadsheets. And this is a pragmatist's tool. We wanted a very pragmatic approach to just pulling the things together that matter to us as tech coordinators. And subscription management was never a lot of fun. It's still not fun, but at least it's one-stop shopping. And you can, with each of your subscriptions, actually put a reminder timestamp on it, and it'll send you an email saying the subscription's close to end and this kind of thing. There are a bunch of reports available. I'll show you some reports here. The asset expiration report is my favorite report, and there are only 3 assets in here, so this isn't a very interesting one. But the auto update date on your Chromebooks, everybody knows that Chromebooks come with a death date, and they used to call it the death date. Now they call it the auto update expiration date. So the auto update expiration date is when that Chromebook will no longer receive updates. And that comes in, it's pulled in automatically from Google. And let's see if I can see it on our Chromebooks over here. So this Chromebook tells me its expiration date is on this date. Again, I didn't enter this, it got pulled over from Google. So it has 2,569 usable days left before it will not update anymore. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good life expectancy, remainder duration on this one. For PCs, I don't get that automatically, but I can set some rules in here so that they get set based on the manufacturer and model of the PC. Then my report, I can actually use the auto expiration report to generate what would reasonably be considered a refresh list. So on some of the schools that I'm helping, there are days to expirations that are in the negative days because they have Chromebooks or PCs that are being used beyond what the school has considered its usable life. But they're still using them. I'm sure that you may have some in your organization that are the same way. This report will clearly show you which ones of those they are. So you can have really straightforward conversations with your administration about, hey, we may choose not to replace these, but let's not pretend they're not beyond end of life. They're beyond end of life. So that's one of the reports. There are also some interesting reports for asset mix. So especially in larger schools, you can start to get a breakdown of how many desktops versus laptops versus Chromebooks you have in your organization, for example. The budgeting module, I'm actually going to try and set up a couple of webinars next week to go over budgeting. So if anybody wants to see that, Gary and Kirk gave me the green light to set some webinars up to discuss that. I'm going to be going over this with Masbo this summer in June, and I'd like to give an opportunity for tech coordinators to see it before I show it to clerks. This budgeting is not about telling you what dollars you have, it's about telling you what dollars you probably should have for the fleet that you're managing. So it does budget projections based on your fleet. And then there are a bunch of settings, of course, so you can fine tune your organization. Last one I'll show is the Reimage Any tool. This, everybody knows, well, not everybody, but a lot of people know that I really like fog. I'm not using fog in organizations anymore. I'm using this Reimage Any tool exclusively now. So this tool has completely replaced fog for us in managing our organizations. It's a thumb drive based tool. It's based on Clonezilla. It's available to you. If you sign up for beta, you could start using it right away. There's a tool that we've built that'll help you build the USB. And then once you build that USB, you can take and boot any machine off of it, and it'll deploy a Windows Pro vanilla image to it and then plug it into your panel, and you can start deploying packages to it right away. So our intent is to build a base image every quarter or so that you can use. You kind of have to agree to using our base image in order to use this tool, so it's not going to be right for everybody, but the people that are using it now are finding some good success with it. And it's, again, a vanilla Windows Pro, Windows 10 Pro. We always build it on the latest one, and we build an EFI and a legacy BIOS boot image, and they're both on the key. So you can throw it at pretty much any PC that you come across, and it'll deploy to it properly. So no more switching things in fog or building 2 or 3 different images for different kinds of BIOSes. This will pretty much handle anything you throw it at. So I'm pretty excited about that too. So that was a script that's not meant to be a feature overview, just a sort of a taste of what the tool does. That is what I have today. You guys have had 0 questions, so I'm gonna just be quiet for a couple of minutes and see if anybody has any questions. I'm not going to hold you any longer than this. I really just wanted to answer the frequent questions that we were getting through beta. But please know that you can reach out to me, and I will spend an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours with you going over this, or 15 minutes, whatever you have and want to spend to deep dive into it. And if you're interested in the beta, please go and sign up for it. I really would encourage you to, if you've got the time to give. We want that honest feedback, even if you know your district won't use it. So I'm gonna be quiet. If anybody has any questions, please ask. And if not, thank you for coming today. You're welcome to go ahead and close out if you don't have any questions, or if you do, then I'll hang out and answer questions as long as anybody has them. So thank you. Okay, we have a question that says, I identify my Chromebooks with a name and an asset tag in my dashboard. Can those be brought over? Yes, they do. They are brought over actually already. The name gets brought over only in the metadata field here, and it comes over as annotated name. I think annotated name, and this one doesn't have one, but I do have an annotated asset ID. So this would be the asset ID that you're talking about, the asset tag from Chrome. That does get brought over. It gets put into what's called the, oh boy, what do we call it? Internal tracking number. And the internal tracking number is not by default visible on the assets table, but you can select it as a selectable column right here, and then it'll show up right here. And it is searchable on this field, so you can bring that over information over and get visibility to it. All right. Hey, thank you, you guys. Please hit me if you have any questions.